papers are manufactured for different purposes and end uses. So there's actually a huge variety of options out there for you. There's very, very inexpensive stock that's more like the copy paper that you use, where it's made for very short run purposes. It has a very limited selection of weights. You don't get card stocks or anything like that. And then you can get into the higher end sheets that think of more like boutique paper. And those are made in colors and textures and different weights to give you a large selection. And those are meant to be around for a while, really reflect a brand or a textural experience. They're great for packaging, that sort of thing. Other times you need a coated paper because of the way it's going to be printed. It's going to perform better if it's got some coating on it, and that allows the ink to sit up on the sheet a little better, and you get brighter colors and better photographs. So you really need to start thinking about the paper before you begin your project and choose one that's going to work well for the project and accomplish what you want the final piece to accomplish.
Focusing on whether it be using something that's recycled, choosing something that WCP converting can do to trim out paper to the exact size the printer needs so there's less paper waste. There's a lot of different characteristics of why people are making sustainable paper choices. WCP Solutions has so many sustainable paper options. To start with, last year in September, we came out with Neenah, The Power of Green, which is a great collection of papers that show everything from 100% recycled sheet to, again, different characteristics in paper you might be looking for that your company wants to focus on promoting itself as choosing FSC certified products, choosing products that are manufactured carbon neutral. You can choose products that are manufactured with alternative fiber sources. As long as you're looking for options, whether it be 100% recycled, alternative fiber, certifications that the paper have, we pretty much have something for everyone.
If it's items that we stock, we'll have the samples available for next day delivery. If it's something that is something we don't stock, it's usually about a week, and we get those shipped directly from the mill. Every piece of equipment has its own technology and its own requirements. A lot of what we use in office spaces and also high-end production is toner based, which means that a powder is actually essentially cooked on or fused to the sheet, and it requires a lot of heat. Well, paper's made out of basically wood pulp and water, and so it has a lot of natural humidity to it. And so depending on whether it was manufactured to withstand the heat of that sort of equipment, will adjust whether it performs well or will even run through the equipment. Your printer may have a piece of equipment called an indigo, which I won't get into the technicalities of the technology behind the way its ink behaves on the paper, but sometimes it even requires a special surface treatment to be used on the paper. So you don't have to be an expert on these different types of equipment, but you do need to start working with your printer very early on in the process to find out what kind of equipment they have. And if you're going to use something maybe they haven't run before, work with somebody, work at WCP. We can get you samples, and your printer can test it way ahead of going into production and just make it smooth sailing once you're ready to hand your files off.
Digital printing is a great option for creating a piece that is being printed sustainably as well. Digital printing, there's almost no paper waste because the very first print piece you're doing is going to look exactly like the very last print piece that comes off the machine. Locally, some of the most go-to brands are HP Indigo presses, iGen presses, and Xerox presses. The HP Indigo is a liquid format toner. It looks very, very close to offset printing. We have the iGen, which is Xerox kind of premium brand of a digital copier. The great thing about the iGen locally, a printer, one of our printers that we work with, have added printing metallic digitally, which is pretty amazing, the print quality that you can get printing gold or silver ink and not having to do it offset and or not having to do it as a foil. The HP Indigo in our market is a great machine to look for as well, because not only does it have your standard 12 by 18 or 13 by 19 print sizes, but a lot of the equipment also can print white opaque digitally. The format sizes can be larger than 20 by 29, almost the same size as an offset press, like half size. So size is a great opportunity if you're doing a small run of posters where you might only need to print 25 posters, but you want something larger. It's great to have the larger format on the HP Indigo presses. And the print quality of either press is absolutely amazing. We have this great tool of one of our products that we carry, the Via and Carnival from Mohawk, that has a full color palette of digital. And the coolest thing to see is not only the flat look of ink using an HP Indigo, but printing color on an iGen, where you have the beautiful white opaque below, a sampling of 1 to 4 passes of the white opaque. Just the contrast that you can get by actually choosing a colored stock of paper and then creating your 4-color image to go on top.
When you're trying to decide whether to print your project on an offset press or a digital press, there's a few things that affect your choice. Let's start with offset printing. Offset printing is best for large, long runs of final printed pieces. So if you have a large quantity of pieces that you're trying to produce, offset printing is the way to go. It takes longer to set the equipment up, but after that, the equipment is very, very fast. And so that is one of the biggest dictators of when to go offset. The rest is going to be based more on your design. So if you're working with specialty inks or specialty coatings, that may actually have to go to an offset press to be produced properly. If it's a very thick stock or a certain type of substrate, that may actually dictate that it gets printed on an offset press. And then what happens post-production as well. Some bindery functions like foiling and embossing are actually more compatible with pieces that have been printed on an offset press versus digital. So those are all things to consider. Digital equipment is great for short runs of printing. So if it's just a few thousand or less, there's not a lot of setup that goes into the piece, and so that's a real sweet spot for it. The other thing is how quickly you need it. If this is an on-demand piece and you want to hand the file off today and receive it tomorrow, it's going to have to print digitally. And then finally, is there any sort of variable data that's involved in the piece? So is there a name change between each of the items or a photo change or anything with the imagery? All of that has to go digital. Once an offset press gets up and running and is running very quickly, your actual price point per piece drops because it runs so fast. There's a lot that goes into the setup, and then it just charges through and starts running a lot of impressions. So the larger the quantity, the lower your price point's going to get. You don't get that with the digital equipment. It doesn't have the setup up front, so each piece is pretty much the same cost as the one before. It's really important to consider what you're trying to accomplish with the brand and the impact that it has on the end user, and paper becomes very important in those considerations. So just work closely with your printer. They'll take a look at what the parameters are for the piece and make a recommendation, and then we can help you choose the right paper for the job.
So when you're considering how the job is going to print, that's again going to help you determine what kind of paper you're going to need to use. And if it's coated or uncoated, it may determine the choice of imagery you're using. You may need to work closely with printer on printing large solids. If you've got extra bindery processes like foiling or embossing, different papers are more suitable for some processes than others. So all of those things need some discussion up front. Work closely with your printer on that, and samples are, again, always available to make sure that you're getting no surprises once it goes into production.